It's a pleasure to have you join me on this virtual journey. Welcome. Thank you for choosing our video on Rudy Vallée. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. Hubert Prior Vallée, July 28, 1901 – July 3, 1986, known professionally as Rudy Vallée, was an American singer, musician, songwriter, actor, and radio host. He was the first male singer to rise from local radio broadcasts in New York City to national popularity as a crooner. Now, we shift our focus to early life, a topic that deserves our attention. Hubert Prior Vallée was born in Island Pond, Vermont, United States, on July 28, 1901, the son of Catherine Lynch and Charles Alphonse Vallée. His maternal grandparents were English and Irish, while his paternal grandparents were French Canadians from Quebec. Vallée grew up in Westbrook, Maine. On March 29, 1917, he enlisted in the U.S. Navy in Portland, Maine to fight in World War I, but authorities discovered he was only 15 years old and had given the false birth date of July 28, 1899. He was discharged at the Naval Training Station in Newport, Rhode Island, on May 17, 1917, after 41 days of active service. Let's transition to music and uncover its significance. After playing drums in his high school band, Vallée played clarinet and saxophone in bands around New England as a teenager. The popularity of the saxophone and an unexpected reply from his idol Wiedoeft prompted him to perfect his technique. He paid Columbia Records to make 4 personal records which he used for audition purposes with a number of bands. From 1924 to 1925, he played with the Savoy Havana Band at the Savoy Hotel in London, where band members discouraged his attempts to become a vocalist. He returned to the United States, briefly attending the University of Maine. While at the University of Maine, he initiated into Sigma Alpha Epsilon fraternity on December 5, 1921. He transferred to Yale University in 1924, from which he earned a bachelor's degree in philosophy in 1927. As a Yale student, he led the football band and was the lead saxophonist in the Yale Collegians with Peter Arno, who became a cartoonist for the New Yorker magazine. After graduation, he formed Rudy Vallée and the Connecticut Yankees, having named himself after saxophonist Rudy Wiedoeft. With this band formed in 1928, which included 2 violins, 2 saxophones, a piano, a banjo, and drums, he began singing as a member of a trio and as a soloist. He had a thin, wavering tenor voice and seemed more at home singing sweet ballads than jazz songs. But his singing, saxophone playing, and the innovative arrangements he wrote for his band attracted attention from a rapidly increasing number of listeners, especially from young women. In 1928, he started performing on the radio, first at New York station WABC, leading his Yale Collegiate Orchestra, and then on WEAF and the NBC Red Network beginning in February 1929. He became one of the first crooners. Singers needed strong voices to fill theaters in the days before microphones. Crooners had soft voices that were suited to the intimacy of radio. The microphones, in this case, promoted direct access to a vulnerable and sensuous interior, or in other words, a conjured intimacy. Vallée was one of the first celebrity radio vocalists. Flappers pursued him wherever he went. His live appearances were usually sold out. Contrary to popular belief, he did not have screaming girls at his appearances. However, his voice still failed to project in venues without microphones and amplification, so he often sang through a megaphone, a device he had used when leading the Yale football band. A caricature of him singing this way was depicted in the Betty Boop cartoon Poor Cinderella 1934. Another caricature is in Crosby, Columbo, and Vallée, which parodies him, Bing Crosby, and Russ Columbo. In the words of a magazine writer in 1929, at the microphone he is truly a romantic figure. Faultlessly attired in evening dress, he pours softly into the radio's delicate era stream of mellifluous melody. He appears to be coaxing, pleading and at the same time adoring the invisible one to whom his song is attuned. Vallée had his share of detractors as well as fans when his popularity was at its height. Radio Review, a radio fan magazine, held a contest in which people wrote letters explaining his success. The winning letter, written by a man who disliked Vallée's music, said, "Rudy Vallée is reaping the harvest of a seed that is seldom sown this day and age. LOVE. The good-looking little son of a gun really and honestly LOVES his audience and his art. He LOVES to please listeners loves it more than he does his name in the big lights, his mug in the papers. He loved all those unseen women as passionately as a voice can love, long before they began to purr and to caress him with 2-cent stamps." Vallée made his first commercial recordings in 1928 for Columbia's low-price labels Harmony, Velvet Tone, and Diva. He signed with RCA Victor in February 1929 and remained with the company through 1931, leaving after a heated dispute with executives over song selections. He then recorded for the short-lived Hit of the Week label, which sold rather poor quality records laminated onto a cardboard base. In August 1932, he signed with Columbia and remained with the label through 1933. Vallée returned to RCA Victor in June 1933. His records were initially issued on Victor's low-priced Bluebird label until November 1933, when he was back on the standard Victor label. He remained with RCA Victor until signing with ARC in 1936. ARC issued his records on the Perfect, Melotone, Conqueror and Romeo labels until 1937, when he again returned to RCA Victor. With his group the Connecticut Yankees, Vallée's best-known recordings include the Stein Song aka University of Maine School Song in 1929 and Vini in the latter years. His last hit record was a reissue of As Time Goes By, popularized in the 1942 film Casablanca. Due to the 1942-44 AFM recording ban, RCA Victor reissued the version he had recorded in 1931. During World War II, he enlisted in the United States Coast Guard to help direct the 11th District Coast Guard Band as a chief petty officer. He was promoted to lieutenant and led the 40-piece band to great success. In 1944, he was placed on the inactive list and returned to radio. According to George P. Oslin, Vallée on July 28, 1933, was the recipient of the first singing telegram. A fan telegraphed birthday greetings, and Oslin had the operator sing "Happy Birthday to You." Let's now shift gears and explore radio and film through a critical lens, uncovering its strengths and weaknesses. In 1929, Vallée began hosting the Fleshman's Yeast Hour, a popular radio show with guests such as Fay Wray and Richard Cromwell in dramatic skits. Vallée continued hosting radio shows such as the Royal Gelatin Hour, Valley Varieties, and the Rudy Vallée Show through the years and years. When Vallée took his contractual vacations from his national radio show in 1937, he insisted his sponsor hire Louis Armstrong as his substitute. This was the first instance of an African American hosting a national radio program. Vallée wrote the introduction for Armstrong's 1936 book Swing That Music. In 1929, Vallée made his first feature film, The Vagabond Lover, for RKO Radio. His first films were made to cash in on his singing popularity. While his initial performances were rather wooden, his acting greatly improved in the late years, and by the time he began working with Preston Sturges in the years, he had become a successful comedic supporting player. He appeared opposite Claudette Colbert in Sturges' classic 1942 screwball comedy The Palm Beach Story. Other films in which he appeared include I Remember Mama, Unfaithfully Yours, and The Bachelor and the Bobby Soxer. In 1955, Vallée was featured in Gentlemen Marry Brunettes, co-starring Jane Russell, Alan Young, and Jean Crane. The production was filmed on location in Paris. The film was based on the Anita Loos novel that was a sequel to her acclaimed Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. Gentlemen Marry Brunettes was popular throughout Europe at the time and was released in France as a Paris pour les Quatre Paris for the 4 and in Belgium as Tevuente Paris. Vallée performed on Broadway as J.B. Bigley in the 1961 musical How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying, and reprised the role in the 1967 film version. He appeared in the As Batman television series as the villain Lord Marmaduke Fogg, and in 1971 as a vindictive surgeon in the Night Gallery episode Marmalade Wine. Now, let's redirect our focus towards Vallée Video and discover its significance in our narrative. From 1948 to 1952, Vallée owned Vallée Video, a television production company formed in the early days of national TV broadcasts. The company was incorporated on April 3, 1948. Vallée made film shorts for television, including These Foolish Things and Under a Campus Moon, in which he appeared himself. Edwin, Pinky Lee, Buddy Lester and Cyril Smith also appeared in Vallée Video productions. Comedy sequences in the productions featured dubbed-in laughter. In 1949, Vallée Video produced one of the first cartoon shows on television, Telecomics. Vallée Video's breakthrough in 1952 would have been a 15-minute television show based on the Dick Tracy comic strip starring Vallée's friend Ralph Bird, who played the character in four successful Dick Tracy theatrical serials from 1937 to 1941. Vallée sold the show as a pilot to NBC. Vallée and Bird also worked on a proposed radio show based on the comic strip Hawkshaw the Detective. However, Bird died in August 1952, bringing the Dick Tracy production to a halt and spelling the end for Vallée Video. Now, let's shift our perspective and explore personal life through a fresh lens, unlocking new perspectives. Vallée was married 4 times. He married Jane Greer on December 2, 1943, in Hollywood, but they separated after 3 months and divorced on July 27, 1944. His 4th and last wife, Eleanor, wrote a memoir called My Vagabond Lover. Always loyal to Yale University, Vallée never forgot his Maine roots, and maintained an estate at Kezar Lake. NBC announcer George Ansborough wrote in his memoir that Vallée had quite a temper and a very foul mouth. Almost always the butt of his nastiness was the orchestra. His outbursts were mean-spirited, and he didn't care who overheard. Alton Cook, however, wrote, Vallée may be fuming at his orchestra, but a Vallée rehearsal never quite loses its air of being a gathering of old friends. Rudy is grimly serious about rehearsal. He sometimes has his band spend a quarter-hour going over one short passage that doesn't satisfy him. On those occasions his temper wears thin. During his divorce from his first wife, Fay Webb, she alleged that Vallée is possessed of a violent, vicious, and ungovernable temper, and given to the use of blasphemy and the use of intemperate, vile, and vituperative language, particularly when applied to. She accused him of committing adultery with 3 women, including actress Alice Faye. Vallée denied the allegations and countercharged infidelity on her part. The judge found him not guilty of any misconduct or maltreatment of Webb which detrimentally affected her health, physical or medical condition. In a heated dispute with producer George White on the set of the 1934 film George White's Scandals, White struck Vallée in the jaw. Dorothy Brooks wrote in 1936, "Other stars on the air have their troubles, their disagreements, and yet you don't read about their ending in black eyes. Only Rudy Vallée seems to figure in endings of this kind." In an interview with Brooks, Vallée claimed he found fighting savage and stupid and the wrong way to try to solve problems, because it never solves them. When asked why he got into fights, he replied, "I just lost my temper. I'll admit I have a too quick temper." Vallée died of cancer at his Los Angeles estate, Silvertip, on July 3, 1986, while watching the televised centennial ceremonies of the restored Statue of Liberty. His wife Eleanor said that his last words were, "I wish we could be there. You know how I love a party." Let's now venture into the realm of legacy and explore the fascinating intricacies it holds. In 1995, a Golden Palm Star on the Palm Springs, California, Walk of Stars was dedicated to him. For his work in radio, Vallée was inducted into the Vermont Association of Broadcasters Hall of Fame in 2011. Welcome to the next segment, where we explore filmography and its significance in our journey. Films. Year title role notes 1953 The Ford 50th Anniversary Show Himself Song Medley and Banter with Bing Crosby and Frank Sinatra 1956 The Johnny Carson Show Himself 1 episode December Bride Himself 2 episodes 1957 The Lucy Desi Comedy Hour Himself 1 episode 1961 What's My Line? Himself 1 episode 1967 Batman Lord Marmaduke Fog 3 episodes 1969 Petticoat Junction Herbert A. Smith episode But I've Never Been in Erie per 1970 Here's Lucy Himself 1 episode 1971 Night Gallery Dr. Francis Deaking 1 episode Alias Smith and Jones Winford Fletcher 2 episodes 1976 Ellery Queen Alvin Weiner episode The Adventure of the Tyrant of Tin Pan Alley 1979 Chips Arthur Forbinder episode Pressure Point 1984 Santa Barbara Elderly Con 1 episode Final Appearance. Television. Brace yourself for a captivating discussion on illustrations as we explore its nuances and implications. Rudy Vallée and Rolf Armstrong begin the process of being painted by Rolf Armstrong on November 21, 1929 Rudy Vallée by Rolf Armstrong painted by Rolf Armstrong on November 21, 1929 Rudy Vallée caricature from Radio Review Rudy Vallée Photoplay June caricature from Photoplay file Old Gold Cigarettes at Rudy Vallée advertisement for Old Gold Cigarettes with a fabricated biography Rudy Vallée caricature from Crosby, Colombo and Vallée caricature in the 1932 Merry Melodies cartoon Crosby, Colombo, and Vallée. Note the megaphone and the curl in his hair Rudy Vallée caricature in the 1934 Betty Boop cartoon Poor Cinderella. In this part of the video, we'll be diving deep into magazine covers and unraveling its profound impact. Radio Review, Deck. Radio Review, December 1929 Rudy Vallée on the cover of Radio Guide, Radio Guide, April 1933 Radio Stars, May Radio Stars, May 1933 Radio Mirror, December Radio Mirror, December 1934 Radio Stars, May Radio Stars, May 1936. Let's now turn our attention to videos and examine its role within a larger context. Kitty from Kansas City A Web Thumb Timer Start and Kitty from Kansas City 1931. Let's now shift gears and explore media through a critical lens, uncovering its strengths and weaknesses. The Royal Deserts are with Rudy Vallée May 5, 1938 1 hour in recordings on standard labels at the Internet Archive recordings on discount labels at the Internet Archive more recordings including unreleased personal recordings at the Internet Archive. Kakari births, Kakari deaths, Kakari century American male actors, Kakari century American singers, Kakari American bandleaders, Kakari American crooners, Kakari American male film actors, Kakari American male radio actors, Kakari American male pop singers, Kakari American people of French Canadian descent, Kakari American people of Irish descent, Kakari articles containing video clips, Kakari IDs from cancer in California, Kakari big band bandleaders, Kakari singers from Vermont, Kakari people from Brighton, Vermont, Kakari people from Westbrook, Maine, Kakari military personnel from Vermont, Kakari Victor artists, Kakari traditional pop music singers, Kakari State Coast Guard band musicians, Kakari vaudeville performers, Kakari Yale University alumni, Kakari people from Lovell, Maine, Kakari Maine Republicans, Kakari century American male singers, Kakari United States Navy personnel of World War I, Kakari chilled soldiers in World War I, Kakari United States Coast Guard personnel of World War I, Kakari United States Coast Guard officers, Kakari Sigma Alpha Epsilon members. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications.